Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the FatBoyz Dynasty podcast presented by the Fantasy Holics. Coming at you, as always, is Bo and Brant. We're going to come at you with the AFC South today, and I'll go ahead and let Bo kick it off with the defending champs, and let's just jump straight into this.
Yeah, we're starting to dwindle down quite a bit here. We've got 3 divisions left to break down, including the AFC South today. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. This is kind of one of those divisions that's a little less exciting, certainly comparatively to some of the divisions that we still have left to do.
Absolutely.
But we'll go ahead and kick her right on off with the reigning AFC South champions in the Tennessee Titans. And we'll just get the obvious one right out of the way here, right off the gates. It's Derrick Henry for me, is the stud in this offense, obviously. And it was really easy to put Derrick Henry as the stud in this team, given the fact that a lot of people are starting to fade him due to injury concerns. Last year Derrick Henry missed, a few games, and it took 4 weeks or so for the next person to catch up with yards after contact after he left. If I'm on my quick stats here, right? And this is just an offense that's just genuinely built for Derrick Henry's success. And I just have a hard time thinking that anything else in that offense is going to be a bona fide stud. He played 8 games last year and still finished in PPR formats as the running back 21. So that's pretty incredible when you consider he missed over half the season and was still able to have 10 touchdowns and 937 yards rushing. So, Derrick Henry is just a wrecking ball. And where he's going in drafts now, there's no question. It's Derrick Henry.
Absolutely. The only real knock on Derrick Henry, and it's not even a knock because everyone knocks it every year, is his PPR upside. But he was actually on pace to have a career year in receptions prior to getting hurt. So it's proving that they want to get him involved in the pass game too. So I think you could be seeing a very easily RB1 this year from him.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, Brant, because through 8 games last year, he was 1 reception off of tying his career high in receptions. In 2021, he had 19. Last year, he had 18 through 8 weeks. So, yeah, he's a guy that, with what he does on the ground, if he could throw in, 40 receptions, you're talking about a guy that is top 3 running back, probably top 1 running back, and in my mind, it doesn't get close at that point. But anyway, moving right on along, my breakout on this roster is actually Austin Hooper. And for me, it's Austin Hooper was another one that was pretty similar to Derrick Henry. This one didn't take a whole lot of thoughts or soul searching on this one. Hooper's done it in the past in Atlanta with Matt Ryan. Ryan Tannehill has substantiated good tight end seasons there with Jonnu Smith prior to Jonnu's exit heading to New England. And I think Austin Hooper's a guy that, if he finishes the season somewhere with 65 receptions, 700 yards and 8 touchdowns, that's a guy that's going to be a tight end that, you're drafting outside of those top 12 rounds. And this is a guy that gives you some position sustainability in the later rounds, and I just expect Austin Hooper to have a pretty good year there this year.
Absolutely, that's you hit the nail on the head. This is a guy that we've already seen, have a top 10 season, and going into where really you got Robert Woods who's coming back from a torn ACL. You got Treylon Burks who you're not sure if he can even breathe quite yet. So yeah, really the pass game is wide open there in Tennessee.
Yeah, and it's weird, too, because the 2 names you have listed, or that you just mentioned, I have listed on my remaining 2 things, which is the sleeper and the dud. And for sleeper, oddly enough, I actually went Robert Woods, because Robert Woods is a guy that, time and time and again in the past, he's turned in fantastic seasons PPR-wise. And obviously last year he got hurt and got phased out of that Rams offense, by OBJ and obviously Cooper Kupp's amazing season. But when you talk about Robert Woods, there's, 2018 to 2019, 2020, or yeah, in 2018, 2019, and 2020, this guy was a top 15 wideout in PPR formats, finishing right outside of our wide receiver one numbers. And this is a guy that I think, in A.J. Brown's absence and Treylon Burks trying to get up to speed, this is a guy that I think you could see Ryan Tannehill, target early and often. And I expect to see, Robert Woods come back and bounce back and get where a lot of people had viewed him in the past. Obviously, Brant, you can remember this. Robert Woods is a guy that I traded for in Dynasty, and you and one of the other guys in our league had to talk me into that trade real hard because I just didn't believe it. I wasn't a Robert Woods, truther, if you will. And, of course, he got hurt, and I've been holding him ever since, not getting to use him. So I've got some pretty lofty expectations this year, hoping to see him hit that bounce back there in Tennessee and maybe build a connection with Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been a truther for the Robert Woods train, and I like the fact that he gets to go into Tennessee and really compete to possibly be that number one guy, if not, this year, if not just for this year, but for maybe a few more years as they get Treylon Burks back up to speed.
Yeah, so let's talk about Treylon Burks a little bit here. And, for me, I honestly think Treylon Burks is going to come in and have a respectable rookie campaign here. I do. I really think this guy is going to have a great career overall. But my problem is in Dynasty startup drafts, he's being drafted as the 57th overall player off the board. Okay, so this guy's going in the 5th round of Dynasty startups. There's just, in my mind, that's just absolutely... it's insane. It's criminal. I just have a hard time thinking that Treylon Burks can't get healthy or is having problems with the asthma, dogging it in practice a little bit, is going in the same area as Jerry Jeudy, Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Marquise Hollywood Brown, Amari Cooper, Devontae Smith. He's going in front of a lot of these guys, and that's just absolutely criminal in my mind. First of all, when you look at Tennessee and their passing production over the years, when Derrick Henry's healthy, they're not going to be a pass-first offense. It's not happening. Ryan Tannehill's not going to throw for, 6,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. That's just not what this offense is. It's not what it's built for. And that's not to say that, you can't have a guy like Treylon Burks be, a really productive part of your fantasy offense. But I don't see his value this year as a wide receiver 1 or 2. And really that's kind of the area he's being drafted in. If you're looking at the 5th round and you've got a guy in your league, or you're the guy in your league that takes, 2 or 3 running backs to start your team, and your first or second wideout is Treylon Burks, they're just really lofty expectations. And I think, for the first couple of years, that's going to need to be tempered a little bit, or tempered, excuse me.
Absolutely. From last year, I've been a Burks believer. I've been on that hype train. He's a big-bodied guy. But his landing situation, in a run-first offense, and, really they've never had a focal point wide receiver. I think it's good for him in a football career sense, as he'll be, even with his asthma, he gets that chance to kind of be a safe play. But fantasy-wise, I don't see the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 upside. And even after watching that preseason game week 1, I know week 1 preseason, who really cares? But even watching Malik Willis, you're going into a team that's going to have a possibly rushing QB in the future. So really, with the way that guy moved, can he sustain both himself? If Malik takes over, can Malik sustain himself, Derrick Henry, and Treylon Burks, and any other young pieces that are coming? He's a guy that everything in the offseason with Treylon Burks has been nothing but a roller coaster. Up, down. I can't breathe. All of a sudden I can breathe. I'm looking good. I can't get separation. So if you want to hold on to them bars and throw your hands up in the air and go up and down this roller coaster, by all means take your shot on Burks. But that's what it is. I'm not drafting him to fulfill those roles this year.
Yeah, honestly, if I'm sitting in a draft and I'm saying, okay, Treylon Burks is a guy I can't leave this draft without. And, we're all guilty of having names like that. I'm really not comfortable in the 5th round. Like, I'm just going to have to – if that was my guy, I'm going to have to get over it because I will let somebody else take that premium. If we're talking into the 6th, early 7th, maybe even potentially, I could be on board with that and probably be a little more comfortable. But there's too many other names that I'd mention there that I'd much rather take a dart on just because their offenses are more prolific with passing, or they've already come out and shown that they're capable of adapting to that NFL speed without having an asthma attack, I guess, if you will. So for those reasons, right now with where Treylon Burks' ADP is, I'm taking a hard pass, and that's really the only reason I put him as a dud. Again, I do want to say and reiterate that I do think he's going to have a successful career. Just where he's at in ADP and dynasty startups, I just have to wave the white flag.
Absolutely. And us being fat guys, we don't normally fit on roller coasters very nicely anyways. We're normally quite uncomfortable in those.
All right, yeah, I mean, Brant, you hit the nail on the head. A couple of fat boys. We're going to be out of breath running NFL routes just like Treylon as well. So we feel your pain, Mr. Burks. We feel it.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm going to jump into Houston. And Houston was actually probably the hardest one I've done in a little bit going through these divisions because looking at ADP, honestly, it was really hard to find a bust. I'm not saying Houston's got, all these outstanding pieces and everything else, but it was really hard to find a bust with how low most of their pieces go. And honestly, I really didn't write anybody down. If I had to choose one, honestly, I'd probably go Mills because we're not even sure if he will be the future there in Houston. He showed that he, had glimpses of it. But really, that's the only one that I could possibly put as a bust in Dynasty because, like I said, you just don't know if he's the one. But and a lot of people are probably going to go, well, you should have picked Brandon Cooks. I'm not picking Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is my stud. This man has he's being drafted in the 8th round as the 40th wideout in Dynasty startups. He's only 28, so he's not, by any means over the hill of wide receiver. He's the number 1 target in Houston's offense. He's gone over 1,000 yards all but 2 times in his career. Okay? And those were in 2014 where he, 2014 where he only played in 10 games, and in 2019 where he did miss 3 full games. But so 2019 is really the only year that he played a decent amount of games that he didn't finish over 1,000 yards. And I believe in 2019, I could be wrong, but that was the up and down year with him and the Rams. And that's where he was, in the concussion, out of the concussion, was only playing 60% of the snaps. So this guy has finished inside the top 20, 6 out of 8 years. What better can you ask for if you're drafting him as a wide receiver 40 or lower? What better can you ask for than a guy getting 1,000 yards from you?
Brandon Cooks is that lone bright spot really in that Houston offense. He's definitely somebody that's easy to get excited about, and you feel for Brandon Cooks because he's kind of been an NFL journeyman for real, and he's went from really good situations to not so much. I mean, he's had prime Tom Brady throwing him the ball. He's had Jared Goff throwing him the ball, and now we've got Davis Mills. Mm-hmm. And so, but just like you alluded to, Brandon Cooks finds a way to get it done every single year. Every single year.
Yeah, it was almost hard not to put him in my sleeper category too, with how disrespectful he always gets in drafts. Sure. Guys, even in your redraft leagues, this guy is going disrespectfully low. He's going, I believe, in like the 7th, 8th round also in redraft leagues. This guy is just straight every year disrespected. But instead, I went on Nico Collins as my sleeper. He's going as the 191st player off the board. Collins is going into a full season with where he's healthy. He's getting that training camp with Davis Mills. He's probably going to be the number 2 option there in Houston. And we know Houston's going to be playing from behind a lot. Like, we do know that they're not going to be winning a whole lot of games. They're going to be trailing. So they're going to have to throw that ball. And there's really not the greatest pass defenses in that division either when you look at who they play. They play Jacksonville and Tennessee. And, yes, Indy does have a better passing defense than most of the other league's teams in there. So I really think if Davis Mills and Houston figure out a good way, I really think both these guys could be or Nico and Brandon Cooks could both be valuable in fantasy, especially later in drafts.
Yeah, Nico Collins was definitely somebody that I was, exceptionally excited for last year, and he just never was able to string together any kind of impressive performances or anything like that. But he's definitely a guy. The ability's there, right? He goes up and gets the ball. He can high point it with the best of them, and that Houston offense is going to have to find a way to move the ball down the field somewhere. Okay, and if I'm the opposing defensive coordinator, I'm taking Brandon Cooks away. That's your best weapon. Mm-hmm. I'm taking it away. So what's that leave? It leaves Nico Collins, and it wouldn't shock me at all to see Nico Collins get 85 plus targets this year, and if he's able to come down with a decent amount of them, we could see a great season from Nico Collins.
Absolutely. And you talk about bringing the ball up or moving the ball up the field and everything else. That brings me to a breakout. And this guy, he's 22 years old. Dameon Pierce, the running back there, he's come out. He's like I say, he's 22. He's a young buck in an old man's backfield with Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead there. And he's been turning a lot of heads in training camp. And normally I don't read into the whole, he's turning heads in training camp. He's looking great in training camps. I normally don't try to read too much into that. This guy came out on his first game. He saw 5 carries. He went for 49 yards, averaging almost 5 yards per. Excuse me. So he went out there and did that. In the preseason, he looked very explosive. He played, I think, what I saw, and I could be a little off on my numbers, but 87% of the snaps with the starters. That was first through third down with the starters. So, and he's being drafted as a 33rd running back off the board in dynasty startups. So you're telling me I get a chance to get a guy that's 22 years old, had a decent little career in Florida, been turning a lot of heads in camp, looked good in his first preseason, and a number 1 back on a team in the NFL as the 33rd pick. Yeah, count me in for that one. I think this guy has a great season. Now, I have seen him slowly start to creep up in some rookie mock drafts for dynasty leagues. I've seen him creep up all the way up to actually the 112 in some mocks that I've done and looked at. And this is a guy that definitely later in the in your rookie draft is a guy I'm targeting, and definitely in a dynasty startup, this is definitely a guy I'm really looking at to kind of put on my bench and see what happens.
My only knock against Dameon Pierce is how unproductive he really was in college. I mean, his senior year he had 13 touchdowns for the University of Florida. All right, which is a great number, but he only carried the ball 100 times. I mean, this is not a guy that's ever in his collegiate career was the guy. I mean, he split the backfield with the likes of Michael P. Ryan for a couple seasons there in Florida, and even as a senior, he wasn't the only running back out on the field. And so I worry a little bit about, because you're right, especially in rookie drafts, he's really starting to skyrocket off the board. And this is another one for me that, maybe I miss out on an absolute steal of a draft because I want to see how it looks before I'm willing to target this player, because I just don't know what he's going to look like actually having to be the brunt and carrying the load. And, like you alluded to, you've got Rex Burkhead and Marlon Mack on the roster, and neither of those guys are carrying the load either. I just wonder if this is going to be a literal true running back by committee. We're going to see all 3 of these guys cycled through. And if I don't know where Dameon Pierce's ADP is in startup dynasty drafts, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable with him being a guy that I would take in a rookie draft. Again, it would depend on where his ADP was in dynasty startups for me to feel comfortable. I'm punting on Dameon Pierce. I know I'm in the minority on this one. I just got to see what he looks like carrying a bulk of a backfield load, because 100 attempts isn't going to work in the NFL. If he's going to be the guy, you're going to have to at least double that in a running back by committee for him to have fantasy value in my mind.
Middle of the 8th round is his ADP. I went ahead and looked it up real fast and in startups.
Not happening. I'm sorry. I'm not taking Dameon Pierce in the 8th round. I'd have to know what other running back names were going in that similar area. But again, without seeing how he holds up and what he can do with a bigger workload in the 8th round, there's just got to be better value for me and where I feel with my feelings.
With running backs, you're getting into the names of like Cordell Patterson, and then there's other names like Singletary and Edmonds a little bit later in the draft. And Michael Carter.
Yeah, you haven't named anybody yet that I would take Pierce over. Michael Carter maybe, just because again I want to see what the offense looks like with Breece Hall being added to it. But Cordero Patterson, I'm taking him again. I'm a Falcons fan, so maybe this is a little bit of my own ignorance there. But Chase Edmonds, in Miami, potentially going to be the guy. Mm-hmm. And the other one you said was I missed it.
Singletary.
Devin Singletary again. Yes, James Cook's added there, but the offense is more prolific than the Houston offense. I'd much rather take a shot on a back there than I would in Houston. Again, this is just my own personal reflection, and I feel for you, Brant. I do, because I'm not sure I would have been able to put together a list for Houston. I might have just said Brandon Cook's name for 3 of the 4 positions and called it a day.
Like I said, I thought about using his name for 2 of the 3 that I actually did. The bust I just punted on because, well, everybody's ADP is in a decent area.
Sure.
So
did you get us all the way through Houston there?
I did.
All right. Well, let's move right on into the team then that I think is going to win the division this year and should have probably done so last year. This is a team that I'm thinking has a chance to make a Super Bowl run. Yes, I'm putting it out there on air, standing by it. The Indianapolis Colts. Again, this one was excuse me. It was easy, but it wasn't. I put Jonathan Taylor as the stud on this team, but I want to throw caution out there with this one because anytime you draft the overall running back 1 in the overall number 1 position in a draft, it rarely seems to work out because at that pick, at the 101, whoever you pick there has to finish as the number 1 overall player for the season. Do you get your return on investment? And rarely do we see that happen. But, Jonathan Taylor, again, much similarly to the way that we talked about with Tennessee, this offense should run through him a little bit. And I do think with the addition of Matt Ryan coming into town, the running lane should be a little bit more open than what they even were last year with the likes of Carson Wentz. Jonathan Taylor last year, again, it took him a couple weeks after Derrick Henry went out, but he ended up finishing as the running back 1 last year, obviously. And he had last year he ran the ball 332 times for 1,811 yards. I don't see the 332 rushes this year. I just don't, just simply because Matt Ryan is such a capable passer still. I think those numbers are going to come down a lot closer to the 300 area, but I do think he'll be more productive with those 300 attempts than what he was with the 332 last year. And I expect last year he had 51 targets. I think he's going to be real close to that 50 to 60 area again with more productive receptions as well. I do want to emphasize, though, I'm not saying that Jonathan Taylor is going to finish as the RB1 next year. I definitely don't see him falling outside the top 3. But if you're drafting him at 1 and he finishes as running back 3, you're probably not real ecstatic about that. So I do want to put that out there because obviously putting him at the stud, you expect him to be really good. And I think he will be really good. At his ADP, I'm not sure.
It's hard to figure out who's going to live up to that ADP when we haven't had back-to-back RB1s in probably almost a decade.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on into my. Let's go to my breakout because we're going to save my sleeper for last because I'm just too passionate about it. And Brant, that'll be a dead giveaway to you who that's going to be. So we'll just save that for that point. But my breakout is Paris Campbell, and this is a guy that I've given one too many chances to probably every year since he's been in the league. I've rostered him at some point his entire career, waiting for that breakout, and there's been injury after injury. And right now, I only call him a breakout because where Matt Ryan's at right now, he's better than what Phillip Rivers was when Phillip Rivers was in Indy. Matt Ryan's always going to be better than Carson Wentz in my mind. And right now, Paris Campbell's the 241st player off the board in Dynasty Startups. That's like the third pick in the 20th round.
It's like, right? Don't even touch him.
And so if I can get a guy that late, okay, this is where you're throwing darts at the end of your draft. You've filled out your starters. You've probably got most of your bench rotation done. Now you're just looking for guys that may be diamonds in the rough. Paris Campbell could be just that. Again, we're talking about Indy having, in my mind, probably the best quarterback they've had since Andrew Luck was there. And you're talking about, in front of him, Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, and that's probably about it. And so, I just think that the value at that point in the 20th round is worth the upside, the possibilities there with Paris Campbell are enough to make me take a gamble on it.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that in the 20th round. I was laughing because I've kind of been on that same train too. I've been waiting for this guy to get his chance, get his opportunity. And this definitely should be his best year to get that opportunity.
Should be, yes. And I think the only thing that holds Paris Campbell back is Paris Campbell. I mean, he's only 25 years of age. Mm-hmm. He's going into his fourth season, but here's the kicker: he's played 15 games in 3 years. So when you average 5 games a year, you're gonna be, really underwhelming in what you put out there. I mean, this guy's never been targeted more than 25 times in a season, just because he's not been on the field. And so maybe you're scratching your head listening to this going, how can you consider that a breakout? Well, if he has 30 receptions this year, it's a breakout for Paris Campbell. And it is somebody that I'm excited about. So
7 games and 30 targets.
30 receptions.
30 receptions.
30 targets would be a career high, too, though, at this point. But nonetheless.
So he doesn't drop it very often.
He doesn't. You're right. He does not. He's not a league leader in drops. Let's move into my dud here. And very similarly to what I did with San Francisco's running backs last year, I'm doing with Indianapolis tight end room. All right. So, again, you've got Matt Ryan coming in, who has had tight ends in the past, like Algie Crumpler, Tony Gonzalez, Austin Hooper, Kyle Pitts. Matt Ryan's had very relevant tight ends his entire career. My problem with this roster is you've got Mo Alley Cox, then you've got a guy named Kylan Granson going into his second year, and you've got an absolute freak of an athlete in Jelani Woods coming into his rookie season. The problem there, to me, in my eyes, and why I made this a dud is how do you differentiate there? Obviously your gut says Mo Alley Cox has been the guy the last couple of years. It's probably going to be Mo Alley Cox. But you probably have to go back to Dallas Clark in Indianapolis to name a relevant fantasy tight end. I mean, there was high hopes in Indy when, Trey Burton was there. I hesitate on that position a lot. This is one of those teams that if I, miss out on the big 3 tight ends and I put the position to later in the draft, I'm looking elsewhere just because I just don't know how this shakes out. If I get one of those big name tight ends and maybe I'm looking to add roster space later, I could see myself picking up a guy like, Jelani Woods, like I know you did in our Fantasy Holics Dynasty Startup Draft. And I think at some point down the line, I think Jelani Woods has got the athletic ability to become a problem in the NFL. But typically, with the exception of your Kyle Pittses and your Pat Freiermuths, the tight end position takes a little while to develop it. And Jelani Woods is raw at putting it nicely when it comes to the decision making, the blocking aspects of things. He's a freak when it comes to going up and getting that ball and making guys miss and moving the ball when he's got it. But I'm holding off on that position. It's one I'm punting. I'm staying away from that tight end position. Now, let's get into my sleeper. Okay, My sleeper is being, oh, Brand, I'm going to have a hard time getting through this because I feel disrespected. My sleeper is a guy who's being drafted 238th overall in the 19th round of 12-man drafts. That is none other than the former MVP himself, Matt Ryan. This is a quarterback who is going to have his best offensive line of his career this season, the best defense of his career this season, the best running game of his career this season. Matt Ryan is a guy that he's still so capable of putting up numbers. This is, again, why I'm thinking this team's got a chance to make a deep run in the playoffs and cause a lot of people problems, because Matt Ryan can manage a game, all right? Matt Ryan can do things with the football that is grossly underrated. And listen, if you're telling me that for 18 rounds I can draft skill position players for my fantasy team and have insane depth at wide out, tight end, running back, and get my starting quarterback in the 19th round, this is the name that I target in the 19th round if I'm waiting that long. In a draft with me, Matt Ryan's probably not staying on the board that late again. Falcons homerisms. I'm probably not letting Matt Ryan go that late. Brand, I know you're not as big of a Matt Ryan lover and fan as I am, but I know you all honestly would admit that this is blasphemy that Matt Ryan is going in the 19th round. My heart hurts saying it, having to write it down on my notes beforehand. When I went and looked it up, my jaw dropped. I was just beside myself that people are willing to pass on Matt Ryan in the best offense, minus the weapons on the outside. Obviously, yes, I know Indy's got nothing that compares to a prime Julio or Roddy White or Tony G. That's great. But everything aside from his wideouts and his tight ends are better than he's ever had in his entire career here. Yeah, you might even make the argument this might be the best head coach he's had. Okay, in Frank Reich, because there was some real stinkers as head coach in Atlanta in Matt Ryan's time. And I just think this is going to be Matt Ryan's year. I think he gets back to, a guy that has to be feared and respected around the league this year. And if I can get that guy in the 19th round, man, I feel like I've won my draft.
Absolutely. I'm laughing because this is a man who just threw the ball 560 times last year. I've literally sat here in my redraft league that I'm in, and I can't tell you how many times I've gone through mocks in that, and I leave that draft without a quarterback, and I go, meh, I've got Deshaun Watson who's going to be on my IR. Looks like I'm picking up Matt Ryan. No problems with that at all. You're absolutely right. It's disrespectful not even putting this man up there, and
he's going into his 15th season in the league, and only 6 of those times was he not a quarterback one. Okay, only 6. So again, this is over 66% of the time this guy's going to be a quarterback one in your 12-man leagues, and he's going in the 19th round. I just,
and one of those years was last year, and who in the world was he really throwing the ball to? Because you lost Ridley early, you had a wide receiver as a running back, you had Zacchaeus and Russell Gage were really the biggest names that were probably on there.
Well, Kyle Pitts, obviously.
Pitts, too.
Kyle Pitts also only had 1 touchdown all season last year. So, yeah, Matt Ryan had his worst receiving core of his entire career last year, and he still finished as the quarterback 20. So that means there were still plenty of guys that were finishing well behind him.
Yeah.
So fade this guy at your own risk. I'm not willing to do so.
Absolutely not. So that's going to bring us to the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that should do a lot better this year than they did last year. Just basing on their coaching staff now. We shouldn't have all them distractions. So I'm going to save my dud for the end because I have a feeling we're going to have a little controversy between you and me with it. Although it kind
Is it Josh Lambo because his leg still hurts?
No. I put him as my stud, I thought. No. Actually, I'll put that right into my stud. In my stud, I'm going with Trevor Lawrence. Here I look at a guy that he's a second-year quarterback who's primed to have a second-year breakout with a new coaching staff. And I know it was, like I said, it's really hard to find a stud on this team. Everybody has decent ADPs, but I picked Trevor Lawrence because this guy is being drafted outside of the top 10. He's going as the 15th quarterback off the board, which I honestly believe with the mobility that he does have. I know he doesn't run out of the pocket on design runs or anything else, but his mobility and the weapons upgrade, they definitely paid money to get him weapons and a better coaching staff. This is a guy that, being drafted as the 15th overall QB, could easily slide into the top 12, top 10 of QBs. So that's why I put him there as my stud.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence was one of those guys that I know you and I had this argument last year. It'd be interesting to know if you remembered. I was on record saying this is one of those can't miss quarterback prospects coming out of college. Very similarly to the way Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck were can't miss prospects. And I do still think Trevor Lawrence is going to become one of those guys. You almost feel like you have to give him his rookie year back just because of how bad and how much turmoil that entire team was under last year. But man, I'm not sure they did a whole lot to upgrade his weapons down there. The $85 billion way overpaid deal they gave Christian Kirk. I'm not sure that the firepower is there for Trevor Lawrence to really take a huge step this year, but obviously I think it's still going to be a big step compared to where he was last year.
Absolutely, and with the $85 billion that they put out for Christian Kirk, I think that when they sign these guys, do I think they overpaid? Yes, but I think when they sign these guys because it almost caters to the strength of Trevor Lawrence. The receivers do a lot of, slot guys running the short routes, allowing him to get comfortable. So I think they more sign these guys as a cater to Trevor Lawrence's strengths. If you remember correctly, Peyton Manning didn't have the greatest rookie year either.
This is true.
So Andrew Luck, I'm pretty sure, did have a pretty decent year. I don't know. He did. Christian Kirk, I guess, will bring me to my breakout. Going as the 110th player off the board, outside the top 50 wide receivers. So all he's got to do is, finish, inside the top 50. And I guess he broke out. He actually finished as the wide receiver 26 in PPR last year in Arizona.
So he's got to be the wide receiver 25 this year for a breakout.
No, I figured as long as he outdoes his draft position outside the top 50, he should be fine.
Okay. He
finished just shy of 1,000 yards last year, and you got to think last year he was in Arizona, and he was sitting behind DeAndre Hopkins for most of the year. Rondale Moore had a good, strong, coming on before he went up and down, and then you got Kyler Murray always running the ball. So I just feel like Christian Kirk being drafted that late in drafts, he's got a good chance to become the number one wide receiver there in Jacksonville. And you and me went over this schedule the other day, and Jacksonville's schedule looks rough. There was a lot of games that you and me both talked. We're like, yeah, they definitely could be an improved team with the coaching staff. We were thinking maybe, 4 to 5 wins maybe, and then we went over their schedule, and I think we barely got to 3. So this is a team that's going to have to air the ball out. And I think Christian Kirk has a good opportunity to break 1,000 yards and see upwards of 8 touchdowns. And I don't think he's going to come out and just, be a top 12 wide receiver. No, absolutely not. This guy can definitely easily, in my mind, finish inside top 36, though.
Okay.
And then that's going to go to my sleeper, Marvin Jones Jr. Why are we not talking about this guy more? This man, he's going, outside the top 220 players. He always seems to find himself inside the top 35 in PPRs and PPR leagues.
Still in front of Matt Ryan, though.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So, okay. Let me get back to my spot now because you got me a little.
Sorry, I'm on my soapbox. I apologize.
I don't blame you, man. It's disrespectful, but I mean we don't have to. You got to let me get on my box. You know that ADD kicks in and I get lost. So this is a man that Marvin Jones, and he's up there in age, so I get it why he falls in ADP and everything else. But in all but, let's see, let me count them real fast. 1, to, we won't count 2014 because he didn't play. 3 years he's finished outside the top 35 as a wide receiver. Last year he finished as 33. He did play 17 games. This is a guy that why is he getting drafted so late? He always seems to find himself as a red zone threat for most teams. For any team that he's been on, he's always been a red zone threat. He's always been, near, like I said, the top 36 wide receivers. So, yeah, he's definitely a sleeper in my book if I get him outside the top 220 players.
Yeah, he's probably a little bit better of a sleeper than Paris Campbell, but that's, neither here nor there. Again, Marvin Jones, much in the way that you were in love with Kenny Golladay when Kenny Golladay left Detroit, Marvin Jones was my guy when he left Detroit. And honestly, I wasn't able to get him anywhere. I don't own any stock in him. I didn't even know he put up as good of a year as he did last year in Jacksonville. So that's definitely, an interesting to hear that he was still, right around that wide receiver 3 number last year. And honestly, if you're in a league that runs a dual flex spot and you're potentially starting 4 wide receivers or 3 wide receivers every week, if you're getting a guy right around that 36 mark, it's not a bad spot to have for a flex. I just didn't realize Marvin Jones Jr. was still putting up numbers that good.
Yeah. I mean, just a little decent year, nothing to write completely home about, but I mean, all right, so we're going to go to...
Better than Kenny Golladay, though.
Really?
Just so the people at home know.
Oh, I still have Kenny Golladay in our Startup Dynasty League. Is that what you want me to say?
Pretty sure he was your first wide receiver taken off the board in that draft too. But
I might rip that sticker off if that board ever comes back out. So we're gonna hit my bust right quick. Travis Etienne is my bust. He's going as the 16th running back off the board, 36th player overall. With Robinson returning so early from injury, now I don't expect Robinson to be explosive like he was. But even if Robinson gets back to 75%, he's gonna spill some of the work. If Robinson somehow gets back to 100% and looks like he did, there's no way you can just bench this guy. Undrafted rookie. Travis Etienne actually now has competition in his way. I think Etienne still will be the number 1 on there, but I just don't know if they stay in the games long enough, if he's going to be involved leading up to that blowout, or if he's going to have to wait till the end of the game to be in the 2-minute drill. And I'm sorry, when you're in the 2-minute drill, yeah, it's great to get your running back to catch some passes, but if you're in the 2-minute drill for the entire fourth quarter, odds are they're not looking for checkdowns. They're looking to air that ball out. So, and I invested in Travis Etienne. I know you invested in Travis Etienne in your other Dynasty League. I absolutely love Travis Etienne. We both really liked him coming out of college. It's just starting to look like a little more difficult to trust him fully at that 16th overall wide receiver spot. Because we also know... Huh?
Running back spot.
Yes, running back, sorry. Because we all know that, Peterson, his new coach, likes to run committees. He doesn't commit to just one running back. And really, when the first depth chart came out, Etienne wasn't even listed as the number 1. He was listed as the number 3 in the first depth chart. And I think it was just the one right before the week 1 that he moved up to number 2. James Robinson is still technically listed as the number 1. I know it doesn't mean a whole lot, but that's something to actually keep an eye on.
Well, here's where I have to argue for Travis Etienne a little bit. Okay, and first of all, let me preface this by saying, if Travis Etienne comes out and has one carry all season for 5 yards, and then he never plays again this year, it's still a heck of a lot better return on your investment than it would have been wherever you drafted him last year. Okay, so there's that. Number two, he's reunited. We've made a big deal all offseason. A lot of people have, not I, have made a big deal about Marquise Hollywood Brown being reunited with Kyler Murray because it's that college connection. Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville is reunited in Clemson of the South. Those guys had a lot of success together in college, obviously, and now the pairing actually should, as long as, knock on wood, that Etienne doesn't suffer, an early season-ending injury again. We should get to see that college duo back together, and I look for there to be a lot of chemistry, like they never left anything off. And my only hesitation on the James Robinson, more love than Travis Etienne. I can't even really use the argument of draft capital because the coaching staff that is there this year had nothing to do with Etienne's draft capital last year and James Robinson being undrafted. But Etienne is going to be with them for 4 more years. James Robinson isn't promised anything after this year. So I think this is one that's going to probably start out this season as a 50-50 share, but I think Etienne's obviously a lot more explosive. He's probably a lot more polished overall than James Robinson is. There's a reason James Robinson was undrafted and Travis Etienne was a first-round draft pick. Well, he probably shouldn't have been a first-round draft pick with the current trend on running backs. But nonetheless, Etienne would have been drafted whether it was in the first round of Jacksonville or second, third round someplace else, and James Robinson wasn't. Again, James Robinson has been amazing, probably one of the best undrafted rookies in the history of the game. Or let me rephrase that, in at least to the most recent history of the game. But again, Etienne, I think he's going to come in, he's going to hit the ground running this year, and he's going to show, this is why I was picked, where I was picked, and this is what I'm capable of. And I could definitely see Etienne at the end of the season being the leading back in a 70-30 to 80-20 split, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Absolutely. Definitely all good notes there. Like I said, the only knock is for me really is how high his ADP is. In my mind, I'm not gonna go out like you said that you're passing on Treylon Burks at his ADP and everything. I think it may take a little time in dynasty leagues for Etienne to live up to that hype, but if you're willing to hold on to that man, I think you'll get your return on investment.
So let me talk to you about this just for a split second, because there's some names going around Etienne that I want to see which one you'd prefer. So Breeze Hall or Travis Etienne this year, which one would you take in a startup dynasty?
Now I'm taking Travis Etienne.
Okay. Cam Akers or Travis Etienne?
Travis Etienne.
Okay, and then Antonio Gibson or Travis Etienne?
God, you just really went after everybody that I dislike nowadays, huh? Travis Etienne.
Okay, those are all 3 names. Two of those are being drafted in front of him. Breeze Hall is going a full round and a half in front of Travis Etienne, and then Akers is going 6 picks before him as well. Excuse me, my goodness there. But I just think that with the names that are right there, there was one that I left out intentionally, but it was Aaron Jones. I think right now in a dynasty startup, I'm probably still taking Aaron Jones. Mm-hmm. The age and A.J. Dillon scare me off quite a bit there. I think I'd much rather have the running back competition with James Robinson than A.J. Dillon. But really, his ADP, for me, if I'm one of those guys that I either play hero running back where I take wide receiver or tight end in the first 2 rounds and I need a RB1 potentially in the 3rd round, that's a guy that I would love to grab right there and have as my RB1. Or if I'm the guy who hoards running backs in the first 3 rounds and you're giving me Travis Etienne as my 3rd running back, I'm over the moon. So I'm comfortable with him and his ADP right there at the tail end of the 3rd round. I don't think his ADP scares me at all. Yeah, and that's wild for me to say because we've never seen the guy take a snap in the NFL.
Right.
But that's where I'm at with Etienne and his ability.
Absolutely. Well, I think that sums up our division, that we're the AFC South. I know this Sunday we're getting together. We're doing our work Dynasty rookie draft. We're all going to come over there and have some Fat Boy food, and I think we're going to try to either try to maybe recap it a little bit with the short cast at the end, or even we'll type something up and get it, our board out to you guys out on our webpage, on our Facebook, and out there on the Fantasy Holics page. So definitely check it out. Be looking for it this Sunday night.
Yeah, our drafts too, Brant, are usually very entertaining because there's a lot of different valuations of talent in this league. You've got some guys that are really, really serious. The good thing about this league is, yes, it's a work league, but there's not one person in there that doesn't really give it a good effort. It's just some of their good efforts isn't as good as others. But it'd definitely be interesting because there'll be some names slide a lot later than they should. And there'll be some big reaches. This half of the FatBoyz Dynasty podcast has no draft picks in this 4-round rookie draft that I'm hosting. So I'm going to be busy trying to make some deals, some wheeling and dealing to try to get in there somewhere. So it'll definitely be interesting to put something out over either the cast or on Facebook, just so you get a real feel for how the rookie draft went for us.
Absolutely.
And kind of where people's heads are at in our league. And I know it's getting late in the season for rookie drafts, but oddly enough, I've got this rookie draft for this dynasty league, and then the following week I have another one for my other dynasty league that I own quite a few of the picks in. So it'd be interesting to see how the two leagues differ and where some of these players fall. So definitely looking forward to that. And as always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.